so many people are choosing the travel option, which is great. I think travel. But do you think it's realistic that we could even, a 16-year-old now could even get into the property market where I think the average price in Sydney is like 800,000?
I think they still can. So this story's not new. You can look back and there's newspaper clippings from 1915 that talks about how the property market's so high and how unaffordable it is. And
welcome to the Driven Young podcast with Byron Dempsey, dedicated to educating and inspiring the younger generation around entrepreneurship and practical life skills we aren't taught in school. Created for young people who seek direction in establishing their goals and passions. This podcast provides a platform for discussing the steps taken by professionals in their field related to handling finances, making money online, starting a business, growing a network, and much more. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young podcast. Today's episode is all about finance, budgeting, and saving for young people, and how you can use it to get a head start in life. When I think of the most important topics we didn't learn in school and what I want to cover on this show, financial literacy and a basic understanding of how to budget, save, and invest your money is hands down one of the biggest topics I want to cover. That is why today I sit down with business owner, mortgage broker, and financial expert Nathan Smith to discuss what he thinks young people like yourself need to be learning in high school when it comes to finance and investing. We discuss if you should buy a home. Is it even possible to buy a home nowadays? Should you travel instead? Practical takeaway tools on how to budget, the power of being young and utilizing compound interest, and much, much more. I know money isn't the most exciting topic, but it is one of the most important things we should be learning, seeing as everyone uses money and needs it to survive. I hope you enjoy this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the show for more episodes like this. Now, over to Nathan. All right, Nathan, welcome to the podcast.
thanks for having me.
Really looking forward to this, but just as a bit of a why should we listen to you? Tell us a bit about your story. What did you do after high school? What are you currently up to? And yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a local Sutherland Shire, born and bred, never left. So stereotype of the Sutherland Shire here in Sydney. Went to the school within walking distance of where we are now, Miranda. So, and then working literally across the road from where my high school was. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but just haven't left. So after high school, it definitely showed I had a knack for numbers, math and science I was particularly good at. And leading into the HSC, I got a phone call from the Dean of Engineering down in Wollongong and invited me to go and study physics down there. And at that stage, I wasn't really sure where to go, what to do. So I took up the offer to go and study physics and realised pretty quickly that I wasn't passionate about it. I had no real interest. It was just something to take up the hours after high school had finished. So,
which is quite a common thing that a lot of young people are doing, I would think. It's like, I don't know what to do. I've got an opportunity, or I got the ATAR that allows me to get into this course.
Yeah, so it certainly wasn't me driving it. The phone call came and said, do you want to have a go? And I said, yep, righto, we'll have a look at this.
Yeah.
Stepped into that and realised it wasn't for me, and my grades were showing that as well, so dropped out. And I went straight into sales. I actually was knocking doors for 2 years. So 2 years I was a door knocker. And if ever you want to go into any sort of sales environment, that's a pretty tough way to learn and certainly gives you a thick skin. I guess having doors slammed in your face and being called everything under the sun makes it a lot easier nowadays. If somebody tells me that they're not that interested, it certainly puts everything in perspective. Yeah. So from there I continued in sales, started working in the automotive industry, and eventually felt like I wanted to move towards finance. That's what I really had a knack for. So while I was in the automotive industry selling cars, they have a department there purely for finance, and it's something I wanted to do. So what I offered to do was to study the finance side of things in my own time, and if an opportunity came up, then I'd take it. So
and what were you currently doing in that? What was your role with that automotive?
In
place? Sales.
Oh,
so you were sales, but you were interested in finance. So you just put yourself out there and said, "Hey, if there's an opportunity."
I just sat down with the GM and said, "That's where I want to head towards. I know there's no jobs available now. Can I start my study now?
Great.
Get myself in a position where I'm accredited, and then if something comes up, I'm right to go." And within about 5 months, a role came up, and I stepped across into that. So started to learn a lot more about finance there. I liked the job, really liked it. However, the automotive industry is very much weekend based, and my wife worked Monday to Friday. And there was a month in June being the busiest month where I hadn't actually seen her all month. And
really?
At that point, it made the decision that this wasn't a lifestyle for me. I needed my weekends back. And I went and spoke to my mortgage broker, the guy who had got me a loan. I said, I want to be a mortgage broker. I want to head there. How do I do it? And he said, when do you want a job? And that's how we started.
There you go.
So 12 years on now. I spent 9 of those years as an employee. So sitting under someone's business, learning the ropes, learning about finance and marketing. And the last 3 years have stepped out and started Birdie Wealth. So that's
really only
my
3
business.
years.
Yeah. So it's a small company, but we've had good growth, really strong figures. We've got 7 in the team now. We're finalists in about 8 national awards last year, winning a couple. So yeah, it was a really, really good year and really good result.
Yeah, great. And I like the point you made. There's kind of 2 cool things you mentioned there, but I really like how you were, I guess, proactive in the way you went to your GM and you said, hey, I'm interested in this. How do we, I know nothing's available right now. I don't expect you to do anything, but I just want to let you know, how can you help me, achieve this basically. But or it was as simple as, can you keep your eye out? Or if there's an opening, let me know, sort of thing.
I think so. I mean, you should be always asking the question. Don't say no for them, I guess. We were talking about this the other day in the office, but don't say no for the person. Ask the question, and the worst outcome is no. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, you've built up that resilience through 2 years of door knocking, and I'd be curious to know, how has that sales skills that you've built, has that applied in your life and business? Has that been useful?
Absolutely. I think sales is an important part of any business owner. They have to learn to sell a product or sell a service. If they can't do that, they can't build a business. That's how you get cash flow. That's how you actually earn an income. So I think learning that way, you found out what the fundamentals of sales are, and it's been the same regardless of if it was selling an electricity plan door to door, whether it was cars, whether it's finance. Sales is all the same thing. It's building a relationship, seeing if there's the needs or wants for the product you're after, and then asking them for the business.
Yeah, awesome. And so, why finance? You mentioned you kind of got into finance, and as we're talking to a younger generation, I want to talk about how important it is, and just kind of reaffirm that we should be starting now as opposed to waiting until we're 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever age you are. Why finance, and why do you think it's important that people get control of their finance?
I think the thing with finance is it can be quite intimidating. It's almost like a foreign language. There's so much terminology. There's so many things to know that quite often people don't take action straight away because they're scared, or they haven't gone and asked the right questions. So I think you should have a good basis and understanding of exactly how your finances work, where your money is going, what is interest, how does it work, are you paying it or are you receiving it, and get your head around that, because the advantage of starting young is time is your friend. Compounding interest is called the 8th wonder of the world. This thing's fantastic. If you can learn how to use it effectively, by the time you retire, it can make such a big difference. I'll give you a bit of an example of that is, and we talk about compounding interest, and we talk about being younger and having so much time. So I'll ask you a question, Byron. If I could give you 2 things, if I could give you a suitcase that has $1 million in it, or if I could give you a coin that's worth 1 cent that doubles every day, just for a month, so for 30 days, what would you take? Yeah,
I mean, at first glance, you want to go, well, surely $1 million. But I've heard this before.
Yeah, that's right. It sounds too good to be true, right? So a 1 cent coin, so just 1 cent that doubles to 2 cents, it doubles to 4 cents. Certainly ends up the more favourable option. I think we end up around the 5 million mark. So it's just that power of time. So
and that's only 30 days.
30 days.
And from 1 cent, I mean, I guess once you break down the math, it's obvious. But without thinking about it, it seems like impossible. And that applies, that 30, you make that 30 days, 30 years, and that's when we start to get that sort of growth in real terms.
That's right. So if we can build up those good habits, whether they're savings habits, whether they're contributing more to your super, whether it's buying a property and holding property and allowing time and interest to accumulate over decades, that's where we can get an advantage when we're younger.
Yeah, great. And just to I guess, go back a sec, what actually is compounding? We just gave an example, but if we could like define it and how to, that's a probably extreme example because it's doubling every day, but what's a realistic example of compounding?
Well, compounding interest is just interest where it adds on to its own interest, and it could be calculated daily, monthly, or yearly. So probably the most common one most people would know would be a savings account. So you have a look now at a high interest savings account. Unfortunately, isn't particularly high anymore.
They don't really exist, do they?
Still call it a high interest savings account. So 2%. I don't know if we call that high percent, but let's use that for an example. So essentially, what they do is every single day they calculate how much money you have in that account, and they pay you interest on it daily. So holding that money in, what happens at the end of the month is you are paid your interest. Then the following month you're paid interest on the amount that you have plus the additional interest that they've paid you. So it's that compounding effect that works time and time again.
Yeah.
On a larger scale, you might see it with property. So they talk about growth rates with property, and that could be a property worth $300,000. If that grows in value, it's then worth more the following year. The growth on that property is then based on the new value. So that's how we get that compounding effect where property grows in value.
Yeah, great. And do you think, I think a huge problem that our generation faces is there's always people do interviews and stuff, and they'll be like, so would you rather travel or buy property? I feel like it's often, people will often choose one or the other. They'll be like, oh, I want to travel, I'm young, I want to get property early so I can, be smart financially. But I feel like more and more people, traveling is getting cheaper and property is getting more and more expensive. So many people are choosing the travel option, which is great. I think travel. But do you think it's realistic that we could even, a 16-year-old now could even get into the property market where I think the average price in Sydney is like 800,000?
I think they still can. So this story's not new. You can look back and there's newspaper clippings from 1915 that talks about how the property market's so high and how unaffordable it is, and how could you ever buy a unit in Cronulla for $48,000? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I know my parents had received quite stern words from their parents because they bought a block of land for $40,000 and put an $80,000 house on it, and they thought that was ridiculous. You never pay that off in a lifetime. So I think it's all relative. I think property is expensive because it's in such high demand, and we have to understand that that is what is keeping the prices up, is that strong demand for property. In relation to travel versus property, we certainly shouldn't just be living at home as a hermit and never traveling.
Yeah.
There is a compromise there somewhere. What we don't want is what we talked about before, is just saying, well, it's too far away, it's impossible to get to. I'm burying my head in the sand and I'm just going to spend it all on travel.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be travel. It could be, cars. It could be just wasting it in general, not having a saving strategy. I talk about Parkinson's law, which I'm a huge fan of. So it's basically, if you've got $1,000 in your bank account this week, you're going to spend 1,000, or you're going to spend, versus if you put 500 straight into savings where you can't see it, you're going to find a way to spend that 500 or live with that 500 you got left. And I think that's a powerful skill people can start if they start putting in young. And, for me, I remember part of my mindset is like, why would I bother saving now when I'm 16 or 17 earning nothing, basically, like $100, $200 a week, when, when I've got a full-time job, I can save that in 2 or 3 weeks. But can you see what you think? I think it's just a habit, getting into that habit, getting into the flow, and setting a goal for getting a property, or maybe having 2 separate accounts, one for traveling, one for property. And traveling's never been cheaper. Like, you can still travel.
I think it's about starting younger means learning money and learning how money works and learning how to avoid debt, learning how to avoid personal debt, personal loans, credit cards when you're younger. So you're right, when you're 16 and your paycheck's $120 for your job after school, it's not particularly motivating to watch $20 go into an account and earn 2 cents interest on it. But what it's doing is starting to create good habits. So that's important, is if we put money aside based on our level of motivation, we'll see it fluctuate. So some months we'll be motivated, some months we won't be, and you just won't get that steady increase.
And the consistency. Yeah,
if we use habit instead and say, well, this is our habit, that 15% of our income goes into our savings account the day we get paid. And like you said, you then learn to live off the remainder of the money.
Exactly. And honestly, it's not even a habit for me. It's just automated. I don't even look at it. I guess it's habit, getting used to living off what I've got left. But with today's technology, you can just automate it. Obviously, if you're on a part-time job and you get paid $600 one week and $400 the next, you probably can't automate it. You've got to be a bit more manual. But I think that's the beauty of leveraging the technology.
And that's the rule there, is pay yourself first.
Yeah.
So once your pay hits the account, pay yourself.
As in savings.
Correct. So that's paying you. So you've paid your money into that savings account and then live off the rest of the money.
Yeah.
The alternate way of spending throughout the week and seeing what's left over on Sunday night and chucking it in the savings account just means you're inconsistent. You're not going to get that same level
and
of
you're probably always going to have less.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing works if you've got a home loan. Pay yourself first. Pay the home loan, pay any additional repayment that you want to, and then learn to live off the remainder of the wage.
Yeah, great. Awesome. And I'd be curious to know, I personally think, the schooling system does a rubbish job of finance. Honestly, it does nothing. It teaches you zero, anything about finance. I did economics, one of 18 of 180 in our year. And even then we learned some finance stuff, but not much. We learned different versions of taxes. We learned about taxes in other countries, which is helpful, I guess.
Yeah.
But, I rather get more into taxes here and stuff. What, if you were teaching a school, if you were to set up a program, what would you be teaching, senior high school, uni students about?
Probably 3 things we'd be looking at. So the first one is how to budget properly, how to use a real budgeting tool, and how to use one that's realistic. So I should put money aside to go out for dinners. I should put money to go outside for a
we're
drink
not
with
saying
friends.
don't sacrifice your lifestyle.
No.
I mean, sacrifice parts of your lifestyle. We don't have to sacrifice never traveling, never having fun. Easy to both. Yeah,
it's balanced. So learning how to use a budgeting tool, and there is one on the ASIC website called Money Smart. You download it. It has categories for takeaway, for lunches at work, for eating out. So it is a realistic budget that you can put some figures into and come up with something. At least you've got a good understanding there of where your money is going. So that's the first one I'd be doing. The second one I'd be doing is what we spoke about before, is teaching people how to automate their cash. So all these systems can be set up automatically. You can have direct debits on your bills, have your savings be pushed out and automated, and give yourself an adult version of pocket money to spend for the rest of the week and live on that tight budget. And the third thing that I'd be talking to them is about how to avoid personal debt and how to delay gratification. So there is a big amount of study about how successful you will be is determined by your ability to delay gratification. A study they do with 4-year-olds is when they put the marshmallow in front of the 4-year-old, and they step out of the room and see if the child can wait a few minutes, and they'll get twice as many marshmallows. So my question to you is that can you as a listener, can you do that? Can you avoid the afterpays? Can you avoid the credit cards and hold off and save some money and then purchase the item rather than wanting it today?
And Afterpay is a big one. Afterpay, I think they came, I saw some article, they're in $1 billion business. They're ridiculously, and they only came, within the past decade or less, I think. They're relatively new. That Afterpay symbol, everyone knows, I think it's blue and black. You see it at every store now.
Yes.
It's dangerous.
They're working off people's ability to be impulsive and not be able to delay that gratification.
Yeah.
So that is what you have to do, is be able to walk away, say, I don't have the cash for it yet, I'll save for it and get into that. Because if you get into those bad habits, they can snowball and escalate.
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't be saying never do it. If you really need it and you need it now and you can pay it off, sure. But it's building that. If you do it once and you're only doing it, it's just a one time, I just need it. But then once you do it again and again and again, and suddenly you're just relying on that, and it's you'll get your pay. And in your head, you're going, oh, it doesn't matter because I can use Afterpay.
That's right. It's only $40 here or $15 here. But again, it's all just building good, strong habits that will then be more effective as your wages go up and as your responsibility goes up later.
And this is all new for, I guess, our generation. The younger people are coming into, they've got to resist social media. They've got to resist technology. Now they've got to resist Afterpay. It's we're not, used to this. And so it's all new.
As we said, we're not taught it because it is quite new. I think our ability to get something quickly now is expected. Yeah. Right. Nobody's ordering clothes online and waiting 10 days for a pair of jeans. Right. Yeah. We want them tomorrow. That's just how it is.
Or 4 hours, according to some companies.
Yeah, so it is something new. We can get our food online, we can get our clothes online. Everything can happen straight away. So the art of delaying gratification is not as common nowadays, but certainly as strong as it's ever been.
Yeah, and I think it's super important. Almost every episode, in some way or another, I talk about stop getting used to short-term gains or short-term gratification, and start playing for long-term gratification or long-term gains, whatever you want to call it, because it doesn't matter if it's finance, if it's relationships. She might be fun now, or he might be fun now, but really he's toxic or she's toxic, and it's it goes across everything. So it's a great point. And so that's a good stuff around finance. I also, before we got more into finance, you mentioned you'd be interested in talking about why you get up at 4 a.m. every morning.
Yeah.
And because 4 a.m.'s bloody early.
It is. And I do have young children, so they can be up at all sorts of hours. But the reason I got in the habit of waking up early was everyone's read 100 articles that say successful people wake up early.
Yeah.
Let's see the habits of these people, see what they do early in the morning. And so it was November, about 18 months ago, I decided to give it a go for a month. I said, let's try for one whole month to get up throughout the workday, get up every morning, start my day, and see if there's any benefit or not. So I was going in very unbiased. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. But I thought, let's give it a go and see how it happens. The month finished and I was happy. Things were going well. Business was going well. My health was better. I felt like I had a lot more time, so I just continued on with that. So what it essentially is doing at the moment is allowing me to get up and get on top of the day. With the team getting bigger now and a young family, I've got some hours to myself with the phone not ringing, emails not firing off, and I can really delve into those big picture scenarios. So whether that's a client's complex lending scenario, whether that's something marketing based for the business, I can really delve into something a little bit deeper when my mind's kind of focused and switched on. There's no distractions. The kids can then wake up about 2 hours later, spend some quality time with them, hang out with them, and then head to the gym and still be in the office by 9 o'clock ready to go. There you
go. Because I've started getting up at 6 a.m. and some morning is tough, and 4 is even earlier. Do you does it get easier?
It does.
Do you get used to it?
Yeah, it was only about 4 or 5 days, I think. But just for your body to get used to that new time, after you start getting to bed on time, getting to bed early, making sure you still get your sleep, once you got into those habits, it was just, you're still sleeping the same amount. You just, instead of doing an hour and a half of Netflix at night, you're doing an hour and a half of work in the morning. So it's just taking unproductive hours and turning them into productive ones.
Yeah, nice. And that's interesting you say that. Because I find in the morning, I think someone said that's when you're most productive, even if you've got the same amount of distractions, but in the morning you don't, which is beautiful. But they say that's often a lot of people are most productive in the morning. That's when you can get more done. Even for anyone who's listening to this who don't have kids and don't have a business and stuff, even for study, I personally, I can't understand how people study until like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. I'd rather just go to sleep at 11 o'clock and wake up earlier and nut it out then when I'm fresh.
Yeah, again, for me, my message is to have a go, have a try, see if it works for you. That's all I did. Is I went in and read the research and the studies and thought, well, let's try it, see how I feel after a month. And the results last year, we had our best year as from a business perspective, from a health perspective. I'm healthier and fitter than I've been for years, and still able to fit in all that gym and fitness around family, around business. So. I encourage people to give it a go. Yeah,
great. And it's the other thing I think is just discipline. It creates really good discipline because you and I, we both have our own business, which means, if I want to sleep in, I can sleep in. There's not really any direct consequence. I don't have a boss who's going to be on my ass. I don't have to be in the office by 9 o'clock or by 8 o'clock. And so that's where I find that's where the difficulty comes in. Like a tradie or someone who has to be at work at this time, that's almost accountability. But if you're in high school or uni, what's the point of getting up at 6?
Yeah, I think so. I got it from a guy called Jocko. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Jocko Willink. He's Navy SEAL.
So that was kind of the final message I heard that made me decide to have a go at it. And I guess what he describes is the fact that by getting up early, it means you can have a few good wins before 9 o'clock. So if before 9 o'clock my emails are clear, my team's set up with all their daily tasks, I've had a chance to spend some quality time with the kids, and I've got gym in it, and now it's 9 o'clock when most people are just having their first coffee, you feel so accomplished.
And you can't compete with that.
Yeah.
If you're getting in by 9, doing none of that in the morning, you're waking up at 8, getting in by 9, how can you compete with someone who's just done all this by 9 o'clock?
And it means I don't have to work the weekends that some other business owners are working. I don't work Saturday. I don't work Sunday. I save that time for my family. But by doing the 2 extra hours every morning, I'm fitting in an extra day each week.
Yeah.
And still getting the quality family time and not having to go to the office on a Saturday, feeling guilty because my family's at home, having family time.
Yeah.
I'm able to get rid of that guilt and just have productive hours in the morning.
Yeah, so it's just prioritizing really. And finding time. Like everyone has time. We all have the same amount of time in a day.
But we don't say that, do we?
No.
If someone asks you, how are you? What do you say? You say, I'm busy. Busy. Like, I'm so busy. And then you ask them what they're doing and what Netflix series they're watching. And they're hammering out one in 2 days. So, So are they busy or are they just choosing where they use their time?
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with choosing Netflix if that's what you want to do. But don't complain about your time if you're going to be watching Netflix or playing PlayStation or doing that all night. That's why I don't think I could work harder, but I don't want to. But I'm not going to complain about not having enough time. The second I do, I catch myself complaining about not having enough time. I'm like, okay, what have I just done in the past week? And if you took it up, I've probably done, just check my bloody Apple phone analytics. I've probably killed, an hour a day on there at least. That's a big one. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's all perspective too. Like I always like to look at someone in a similar position to me, and it's not hard to find world leaders or other major business owners who have families, who have bigger businesses than you, that work a lot harder than you, and they're not complaining about how busy they are. That's exactly what I do.
So I try. Relative. I don't compare myself to the people around me. I compare myself to those sort of people. Like I just finished reading Elon Musk's book, and that'll make you feel bloody inadequate about how hard you're working. He's got 5 kids, and he's running 2 huge companies, and like the hours he's putting in are just ridiculous. And it's like, that's who I try to compare. I don't want to work that many hours. I don't plan to. But if that's like a benchmark, it's like, stop comparing yourself to if you've got some drop-kicked friends or something. It's like, oh, they're playing PlayStation. I'll just play PlayStation. Once again, there's nothing wrong with that. I play PlayStation. Just don't complain about your time. It's just prioritizing it.
Correct, yeah.
I want to ask a question about cars.
Yes.
So I like talking about cars because I just think it's such a bad investment when you're young. Brand new cars, that is.
Yep.
So obviously, I'm not saying like people need cars. You need to get to work, and from work.
Yeah.
But a brand new car, it's that exact same thing we just mentioned. It's instant gratification. I can get it now. Maybe I've only got $3,000 in my account, so I can't afford to get a $5,000 car, but I can afford to get a $40,000 car because I can get the loan, and that's where car manufacturers, and that's what they're playing off. I'd be curious to think a lot of people justify getting a car or whatever because it increases their credit rating. What are your thoughts on like a car loan increasing credit rating? Is that actually a good thing?
It doesn't really have a huge effect on your credit rating. So the credit rating system in Australia is a negative system. So it only hits you if you default. So if you're late on payments, if you're late. So it doesn't really increase your credit rating, not for the amount of interest that you're paying and not for what you're spending on the actual car. So yeah, when it comes to cars, if that's your vice, if that's what you want, go for it. Just make sure you're doing it for you. It's what you actually want. You're not doing it to get a photo for Instagram.
Impress everyone else.
Or to keep up with someone else who probably can't afford their car either. Coming out of that side of things, I worked with some higher end brands like Lexus and some of the more expensive Toyotas as well. And we saw that the people over at Lexus weren't necessarily better off.
Yeah.
They just took bigger loans. Is that a good thing? I don't know.
And Lexus is Toyota's company, isn't it? So that's like the premium version. A lot of people don't realize that.
That's right.
So yeah, Toyota has Lexus as their premium, just as a marketing perspective, because they're not getting a cheap Toyota or whatever it is. Do you think if we were to chat about what are the biggest mistakes you see people making financially, I'd say, I don't know, brand new cars would be in there. And I guess when I'm say people with more younger people, what do you think are the biggest financial mistakes they're making, and how can we avoid making those mistakes?
Credit cards can be super dangerous. Yeah, so tread really cautiously prior to getting one. Start with something with a really low limit and learn how to use it. Learn how to spend the money, pay it back each month. It's not a line of credit. It's not something to leave debt on. If you look at the numbers on having a balance on a credit card and making the minimum repayment and how long it would take to pay it off, you're talking 45 years, 60 years. It's just ridiculous.
And to break that down, so when you get a credit card, they tell you, the minimum payment you have to make to pay this off is X amount.
Yeah.
And they tell you the minimum payment. And if you realistically, you want to pay a lot more than that, so you can pay it off quicker. But you're saying if you hit the minimum payments, it can take you decades.
It will now say that on your statement, how many decades it will take for you to pay off your card on the minimum repayment. So that's been introduced.
Wow.
But you need to clear it every month. You put the debt on, you clear it every month.
So building that habit.
Yeah, if there may be a month or two where an unexpected bill comes up, you've been sick or injured, the car breaks down and you have to roll it over for a couple of months, but it can't be a habit of leaving debt sitting on a credit card. So, back to it, I think you can only control how much you earn so much. If you're in a certain industry, they earn more than others. Other industries earn less. You may be really new in your career and you've still got to cut your teeth, do your time on lower wages. But what you do have a lot of control over is your spending habits and what you're wasting your money on. I hate the fact that things like a car is considered an asset. Like, why is something an asset if I buy it for 30 grand and in 10 years' time it's worth $1,000?
Yeah.
That's a terrible asset. Like, who's going to invest in that? So it's not an asset. It's a mode of transportation. It costs you money every time you put it on the road. And just understand that if you can take that cash, use that in a more effective and a real asset like property or shares, then the outcome in 10 years' time is going to be a lot better.
And you can get cheap cars. Like I just got a Subaru Forester. It's like my dream. It's the best car. It has everything. It was like 10 grand, and like that's amazing. That was how much was that brand new? Probably 50 or 60.
Yeah.
So you can get amazing cars really cheap.
Yeah.
I guess the problem is when it's in that situation, it was from just a personal guy on car sales, so I can't get a loan for it. Or you can, but it's a lot more expensive when it's not a brand new loan because it's not an asset. It's just a personal loan. It's not a car loan. But yeah, I just don't think there's any excuse to be getting a brand new car unless, you're really balling or something.
I think it's about, living within your means, and not working out where you want to be next year, but maybe where you want to be in 10 or 15 years' time and setting your plan and your purchases based on that.
But also, for the price, you could travel for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is a much wiser investment because when you travel, you learn, you get experiences, you get introduced to new cultures, you might meet someone, you might meet people who build your network and you get a job through it. Like there's so much more opportunities than getting just a nicer thing that gets you from A to B.
Yeah. Again, though, it could be, if it's your vice, it's your vice.
Yeah.
I get that. But just they're things to look out for sure.
Yeah. And everyone's got their thing. You might be a car person. You might be shopping for clothes every weekend. You might be a tech person. That's probably me. I like, whatever Apple's bringing out or whatever that is. And even I noticed, like, I have one credit card, and that was for when I started the business for Apple to get a laptop because I couldn't afford that and I needed something. And Apple offered 18 months interest free. I was like, you beauty. This is fantastic. And I paid that off within 18 months. But once again, Apple give you the minimum payment. That's not going to pay off in 18 months if you do the minimum payment. It's like, and that's where they get you on the interest. But just having that, like I'll often go in and say, I want a new monitor or something. I'll just buy it because I can get it.
Because you've got access to that
exactly.
facility.
And I'm like, this year I can't. I got to stop doing that. I want to pay it off fully because I keep getting down and then I'll go back up. I keep getting down and go back up. So it probably sounds hypocritical because I'm talking about we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
But like, it's a small amount of money, but I'm noticing it and I'm like, okay, geez. So but that's I can only spend it at Apple, which is probably good.
Yeah. But it's funny. We've got that expectation now that we need to have 1 or 2 TVs. We've got to have a phone, a laptop. Yeah. And we didn't have that kind of 15, 20 years ago. You didn't need to have all those electronics and consumables that you're changing over every 18 months. But now you do.
That's what I mean by like, we have to deal with all this new technology coming out, constantly changing, we've probably got more expenses than previous generations, which is our own fault, just because we want the latest iPhone, we want this, that, whatever it is, when we don't need it. And I have the latest iPhone. So, I mean, but that's my thing. I don't buy clothes. For me, when we were talking about before, pay yourself first, the way I see it is I pay myself for savings, and then I've got expenses, and then I've got splurge, which is fun money. Yeah. It's like $50 a week or something, not much. But that I often won't spend it for weeks, and I'll be like, and the whole point of that is you have to spend it on fun stuff, going out, whatever you want.
Absolutely.
And then the rest is just kind of left over. It's like bonus. That's the way I see it. And that's the way I kind of think about it as my mindset. Like that's just bonus.
And that's the message again. It's just balance, right? It doesn't have to. I'm not saying scrooge it all away and don't spend a cent. Just find a fair balance.
So we mentioned cars. What else do you think are big financial mistakes younger people are making? Would we say travel is one of them?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So I haven't mentioned travel. I guess being conscious of what you're spending on travel and again finding a good balance. Do you need to do 6 months in Europe? Could you do a couple of weeks in Thailand instead? I don't know. Again, people have different vices. So I don't want to tell people how to use their money. If they want to do it, they want to do it. But yeah, there's some great benefits of traveling as well. But again, just finding a balance and how you spend your money is completely up to you. But just being conscious of if you have those real big term goals, if you want to have a property by 25, if you want to retire by 40, you can't go and spend $15,000 on travel in a year and expect to get there. You just can't do it. So,
because you're not earning while you're traveling.
That's right.
So it's $15,000 of travel, but it's also 6 months of no income.
Wage.
Yeah. So it's probably more like $30,000 worth of. But once again, priorities. So I let's not classify travel as a expense people are making. What else do we see young people, big mistakes they're making that could affect?
Just anything that's consumable that you got easy access to. Things like we have a lot of subscription-based items now that we didn't have before, and they do add up. Like, do you need 5 streaming services? Can you have one? Can you have 2? Right?
I think we split it. My family, we only pay for one each, and then we share it.
That's it. There's plenty of tricks around. But they're the sort of things that can creep up. Do you need a $100 a week gym membership? Would a $20 a week gym membership do something similar? We start to add up all these bills, and we add them up over a year or 18 months. We're starting to work towards a decent deposit here.
It's hard as well because, like, stuff like F45. I don't know if you know F45.
Yeah,
F45 is fantastic. It's like $70 a week. It's just phenomenally expensive. I was blown away. I was like, holy crap. But, if all your friends are going there, it's a great social place. It's great for working out, and you can kind of justify it. Then yeah, sure. But like that stuff adds up, as you mentioned. And I've just, as a business owner, I've got so many subscriptions as my business. I've got, Xero, accounting software. You've got project management software. I've got Dropbox, Google. I think I've got like $500 a month just in like subscriptions alone. And like that stuff adds up.
And add up slowly.
Real slowly.
It's $6 here, it's $10 here, it's $30 here, and then all of a sudden you're at your $500 a month worth of expenses and wondering where that cash flow is going.
Yeah. So, but that comes back to your budgeting tool.
That's right.
So that's where if we can use. So I don't actually use a budgeting tool like that for my business. I do, but not for my personal. I've just kind of mentally got it. But that sounds like a great tip.
Just print out your transaction statements. They don't lie. They don't lie.
They're brutally
Print them
honest.
out for 3 months and sit there with a highlighter and say, where's my money actually going? What am I allocating? What do I think I'm allocating towards food, and what am I actually allocating?
Yeah, right.
What do I think I'm spending on entertainment, and what is actually coming out? So it is an interesting exercise. It doesn't take long. It would take you an hour to look through your statements. It'll take you half an hour to fill out a budget, and it will be really interesting. I doubt very many people would get their budget compared to what the actual figures
what they actually thought it was.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah,
awesome. It's been a great conversation. Just before we wrap it up, I always like to ask all of my guests, what is your number one piece of advice for the younger generation? So it's quite a hard question, but it doesn't have to be financing. It can just be anything. What would your number one piece of advice be for the younger generation?
Look for challenges and take on risks. I think it's really good. You can do that when you're younger. You've got less responsibility. If you're waiting for the perfect time, it's never going to happen. So many people want to start a business. So many people want to travel. So many people have these great ideas, and taking in action is an action. I would much rather take an action, fail, and at least say I've given it a go.
And learn from your failures.
And then continue on. So yeah, take action, be courageous, and give something a go.
Yeah, and anyone who's listened to my other episodes knows I'm a huge believer in taking risk while you're young, because you've got no kids, probably. No kids, probably basically no responsibilities. It might feel like you do, but you don't in the big picture. If you're still living at home, the worst case scenario if you take a risk is you might lose a bit of money. you're still going to have a house over your head, a roof over your head. Sorry, you're still going to have, you're going to be fine. Versus if you've got a wife and a kid, or kids, and they're relying on your income, and you take a risk and eat it, and now you're like, what do I do? I just think, taking challenges and risk is great.
I think so. And it's all on you. It's your responsibility. You get to drive it and do what you want. And if you fail, you fail. That's the worst that comes.
Awesome. And where can people find you if they want to find out more about your company, more follow you online, more about what you do?
birdiewealth.com.au is the website, and we're on all the usual socials, so you can find us on there. A couple of podcasts to listen to. How Gen Y Buy is a really good podcast interviewing other first home buyers on how they did it, what their story is. And we've got a brand new one out called For the Shire, By the Shire. And that's talking to property professionals, experts in around the Sutherland Shire. So a few spots to find us there.
Yeah, great. So Gen Y, How Gen Y Buy, that sounds really good. And BIRDIE, Wealth, that's your company.
Correct.
And if we just search your name.
Search us, we'll be on all the usual socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah.
Awesome. Nathan, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Byron. Thanks, mate.
All right. If you are still here, thank you so much for listening to this entire episode. If you got some value out of it, it would mean the world to me if you left a review on iTunes or shared it with your friends or family. Otherwise, I'll be putting up videos of this episode on Instagram and Facebook. So check it out there at Byron Dempsey or at Driven Young Podcast. And I'll see you on the next one.